Live? It says we're live, so great. How the hell are you all doing? I'm just setting this thing up here, so I'm not sure if I'm in the right spot or not in terms of like, am I close enough? Am I close enough to this? Okay, that's enough of that nonsense. Well, as you might be able to tell already, I am sick. And my girlfriend Susan and I got sick. I think I started getting sick on like Friday. And so as I'm recording this or streaming live right now, it is, what day is it? Wednesday. And so there's various things going around, and probably if you live in the Northeast, you're going to get this pretty soon of the United States, and this it's a respiratory virus, and it's a typical respiratory virus, but then it started to feel really really bad, like I couldn't breathe very well, and there's a lot of stabbing pains in my chest and my throat and all that kind of stuff, and I was like, well, this really sucks, and so I finally decided, well, I can't go into work on Monday because I was just too shot. And I was going to go in because, and this is important, because, I used up all my sick time this year. The company that I work for gives us 56 hours or 7 days worth of sick time. I think it used to be 5 when I first started. Maybe they bumped me up to 7 days. I can't remember. But anyhow, 7 days of sick time. The first 2 days I took in like the very beginning of January because 'tis the season, it's time to be sick. And since, over the course of the year, I haven't taken out like a string of days sick, but I've been sick a few times. So I think probably, 2, maybe 3 days tops, at a pop, I've taken them because in most cases when you're sick, you got a virus. And like my friend Eloy, who is a physician, likes to say, well, if you don't do anything, it's going to last about a week. And if you take vitamin C and all these medications here and get lots of rest, it's going to last for about 7 days. So virus is a virus. It does what it does. This one was like knocking me out, and I'd used up my sick time. So, the only thing I had was 6 hours of banked sick, which I think might have rolled over from something else. I'm like, okay, well, let me take that. Hold on. I'm on a lot of medication right now, so dry mouth and all that kind of stuff. So, even missing the 2 hours was going to be brutal in terms of, oh man, it's going to be less money in my check. So I take that day off. And so I go in Tuesday, and I feel terrible, and I can barely breathe. And so I managed to get through 3.25 hours. And I can't do this anymore. I let my boss know, listen, I got to go home. And I'm going to various different accounts. And so now I'm terrified. I'm not terrified because I might die. I'm terrified because I won't have enough money in January from this check to pay all my bills. And, at that point, what have I really, lost? Not even quite a day's worth. So then I finally decide yesterday to go to the doctor, go to the walk-in. My girlfriend convinces me, you sound terrible. Go to the walk-in. So it's $60 copay. I'm like, oh, that's wonderful. Hooray. To get checked out. And, it's a good thing I went because there's spots all over my lungs. And they say, I think you have pneumonia, but go to the hospital because it could be something like congestive heart failure and all these other things. So you need CT scans. I'm like, oh, that's great. So I go to the hospital, and so I end up staying there till 2 o'clock. So this video isn't meant to be a sob story about my illness, but the point is, here I am. I'm seriously sick, and I'm waiting for all these tests to come back. And I'm really not scared, but I did what any good person would do. So I took out my iPad and started looking up congestive heart failure and all these other things they're looking at, but all the other things they possibly could be, as they're trying to rule out everything. Spoiler alert, I just have the virus, and so, and it's messing my lungs up and my asthma up pretty bad. So they put me on prednisone, which seems to help quite a bit, although it gets me a little bit wired. Anyhow, so I'm not thinking straight because of all these medications. I'm taking the usual antihistamines and all that are BS to manage other symptoms. So I'm a little wonky, which always makes me a little, I never like feeling that way because of, having been an addict or an active addict. So anything that makes me feel a little bit different, I'm not always happy about. But, you do what you have to do in circumstances like this. So anyhow, if I can get to the point anytime before you nice people grow old, like me, is, I go to there, so I'm sitting there with wondering about my mortality, and I start looking up these possible things that could possibly be with the pulmonary embolisms, and possibly this could be indicative of a cancer, or this could be, congestive heart failure. And I'm looking up the survival rate of congestive heart failure after it becomes symptomatic, and it's not a long time. So I'm like, whoa, that's exciting. I started, really rooting for pneumonia, like bacterial pneumonia or something like that. It's going to be that. All the tests came back negative. But it got me thinking in that moment, what would I do differently if I knew that I had 6 months to live or a year to live or something like that? And, I thought about not only in terms of my life, like what would I do? Would I go on vacation with Susan and damn the torpedoes and, all that sort of stuff, in terms of financially, because, well, I'm going to be dead. And, hopefully my life insurance will pay back her credit card if we go to Greece, that sort of thing. But the other thing I was thinking about is like, how would I live my life otherwise? Would I speak my mind differently? Would I say different things? What kind of videos would I make on the channel? Because as I'm thinking about it, thought to myself, well, you know what? If I was terminally ill, if I got some kind of sentence, like, okay, well, you've got approximately this much time, I'd still make videos. I wouldn't want to make videos chronicling my illness. I know people do that, and it can be a little bit morbid, but that's not exactly what I'd like to do. But like, would I behave differently? Would I remove filters? Would I say things differently? And I got to thinking about that quite a bit, and this idea that if it gave that that lack of, I don't want to say it's a lack of consequence, but the idea, like, if you were going to go anyway, if I was going to go anyway, would I say things differently? Would I be a little bit more direct? Would I stop hedging my bets so much? Would I speak my mind a little clearer? And I'll get back to that. But yeah, I'm still thinking about that because that's a very interesting topic. And backing up, it's like, well, why aren't you doing that now? And you can apply it to any part of your life. How would I act, right? If I knew I only had a year to live or 6 months to live, why aren't you doing that now? But I started thinking about or experiencing another thing, which is I'm still kind of reeling from right now. And that is the financial aspect of all this, because I haven't gotten the bills from the hospital yet. I don't know how good my insurance is with a really long ER visit. I really haven't, done anything like that with this particular insurance. I think when I had to get rabies shots because I got bit by a bat, believe it or not, it was like something like $1,200 out of pocket. And I'm thinking, rabies, that's like the oldest vaccine on earth. How could this possibly be that expensive? It should be almost free, right? But the thing I'm thinking about at this point is, okay, well, I don't know what the doctor bills are going to be, but screw the doctor bills. What about like next paycheck? What about my first paycheck in January? How is this going to affect it? Because at the end of the day, they're giving me, okay, well, you can take the next 3 days off, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. This is Wednesday as I'm recording this, I believe. And great, that's great because I'm sick, but oh my God, I can't afford to take all those days off because I'm looking at like almost 4 days out of the 2-week paycheck. And I'm figuring out exactly what that would be net, and it's catastrophic. Like, what bills can't I pay because of that? And this is where we're at in the United States. It's not that different in Canada either, apparently. And, I've done a lot of research on, other countries like Nordic countries, Western Europe, all that kind of stuff. It's completely different. Not only is the vacation time a lot, like 4 weeks or maybe, I think, was it France that gives them 5? Whatever it is, doesn't really matter. And like, think of how long it takes to work up to 4 weeks of vacation, paid vacation time in the United States. My job, I think I'd have to be there for 10 or 20 years to get that much. But the sick time, on the other hand, how like the European countries handle it is completely different. Instead of, being punished for being sick, it's expected. And the emphasis is on your recovery. Okay, well, we're gonna pay so you can actually get better, and then you can come back to work, and great. And we don't have that here. And instead, people in the United States are having to decide, do I go to work sick, or do I stay home and recover, and then I'm not able to pay my bills? You're between Scylla and Charybdis, in the rock and the hard place. What do I do? The monster in the whirlpool. What do I do here? Because it's catastrophic either way. It's catastrophic if I have to go to work sick because I'm like literally risking my health at this point. When I went into work, I'm like going to these various machine shops and I'm walking with little packages of stuff. I haven't gone to the place where I was lifting big stuff, and I'm like almost passing out. But I'm thinking, well, I have to go back in. I can't go home because I won't be able to afford, my life, like my regular bills. And so a choice between that or staying home, getting better, and then being in serious financial trouble. Because like a lot of Americans, a lot of people, I am like a paycheck away from disaster. And the amount of people, I feel guilty about that, but the amount of people that are in that same position is staggering. And it is, without getting all conspiracy theory on you, right where they want us. Because it's a seller's market in terms of the job market. But that's a good thing for corporations, because then we're desperate. Then we're not going to complain too much when they pull crap on us, or we don't get raises, because what else am I going to do? Where am I going to go? Who's going to hire me? So they can pull a lot of crap on us as far as that's concerned, and that sucks. That's not right, and it's been engineered. Once again, not conspiracy theorists, but it's been engineered by politicians and everything else, and lobbying on politicians to benefit the people at the top. Kids, if I may swear, that's fucked up. That's not cool. But this is the reality of being sick in the United States. And, that's just absolutely mind-blowing. What makes it worse, as I talked to my boss today, and I let her know, well, hey, listen, if I feel up to it, maybe, I don't know about tomorrow, on Thursday, maybe Friday, I can try to come back to work. She goes, well, no, actually, you've got this doctor's note. So according for our HR standpoint, you can't come back to work unless you go back to the doctor and get a note from them saying you can come back to work, which means I would have to pay a doctor again to go into work to get paid, which is, of course, insane. That's nuts. And we sit here in this country and accept this as normal, and accept that what they get in Western Europe as somehow excessive, or well, that's ridiculous. And no, it's not, dude. These are like basic human rights, and the idea that you got to be kidding me. So, and she also said, you know what? We're not going to penalize you. And she felt bad saying this. We're not going to penalize you for being sick because you got the doctor's note. Like, I could have gotten in trouble for getting sick. In the United States, you can be fired for being sick. There's no federal law protecting. In fact, it's just the way it is. Why are the laws that way? Because they benefit the people at the top. Why aren't there laws saying that you have to, there's no law that says you have to have any kind of paid sick time in the United States. Why not? Well, because it benefits people at the top. It benefits the people, that have all the money. Because how else are they going to get the rest of the money from us? And man, back in the day, I swallowed trickle economics, hook, line, and sinker. And really believed that, we couldn't tax the wealthy, because they're going to use that money to invest into more capital so we have jobs, and the rising tide raises all ships and all that other stuff. And it was a lie. And it's just having, the mask pulled off and looking at the data and going, oh, you know what, they really fucked us over. And that's not cool. And then all of a sudden we've got situations, and this is not a sob story for me, because, I would love to hear your experience with this, because that's the same thing. Like, I'm just telling a normal story. That's what makes it even more, I'm going to swear a lot in the studio. What makes it more fucked up is this is just a normal story in the United States. Guy gets sick. Guy doesn't have any more sick time. Guy has to choose, what do I do? Am I broke? Or am I going to be healthy? And in a situation when it's like a serious, this is actually a serious illness. Like, I could actually get really, really ill and die and all that stuff. If I didn't, get the prednisone and all that kind of stuff, because literally I'm just wasn't able to breathe. So it could have gotten a lot worse. So, but the point is, seriously, this happens to people all the time. And, I tried never to get political or crazy on this channel. So, caveat? I am not promoting violence. I'm not promoting violent revolution and all that kind of stuff. Excuse me. Laughing is always a bad idea because it makes me cough, and coughing hurts like a son of a bitch. When Luigi Mangione killed the gentleman, and I forget which company he was a part of, when that happened, I had an appointment with one of my providers the next day. And there's a group of providers in that office, and I'm actually changing water or cleaning out a fish tank they had. I come in and that's part of what I do. I actually make enough money doing that it offsets most of my copay, or I think it totally offsets my copay for that provider, and just by accident. But there we are. The Luigi Mangione thing had just happened, and this other provider said, "Well, the only thing that makes me mad is he didn't get more of them." And this is like a medical professional. And the amount of medical professionals that came out of the woodwork and said similar things was astounding. And because very often we'll look at, or people will look at doctors, oh, you make all this money. And it's like, dude, they should make a good amount of money for what they do and the amount of school they had to go to and all that kind of stuff. And they certainly don't make money as an intern. But it's the insurance system and all that stuff is bananas. And it's set up to get as much money as possible from you and I, because insurance companies are businesses that are supposed to make lots and lots of money. They're betting that you won't get sick, and they, will hire lawyers to get as many loopholes as possible, so they don't have to pay you. Just like enough lobbyists have gone to the government to make sure that companies don't have to help you out if you're sick or all that kind of stuff. And it's not like I'm looking for a handout or people are looking for a handout, but just human beings get sick. And the fact that in this country, in what's arguably one of the most developed countries in the world, that's how we're going to treat people, and people are going to be forced to make those kind of decisions, is insane. And I'm speaking from a position of privilege because I do have paid sick time, some, and there's a lot of people that don't have any at all, and that is insane. That's crazy. And why the hell are we putting up with this? We're putting up with it because we're used to putting up with it. We're putting up with it because we've been told that being sick is almost a moral failing. I remember getting an unsatisfactory job rating at the state at one point because I'd been sick too much. And part of the reason I'd been sick too much is I had taken some sick time when my kids, who were very little, got sick, and somebody had to stay home with them. So very often I would stay home with them, and we'd pull out the couch and we'd watch Nick Jr. and stuff like that. It was actually some great times, by the way. You have little kids, span that time with them because they grow up, and next thing you know, they're 30 or 32 years old, and what the hell? Time goes by really fast. And now I've got granddaughters, which are also really, really cute. But that's part of why I ended up using a bunch of sick time. I had a tremendous amount of sick time saved up with that particular organization, with the state, because with them, it would roll over and roll over and roll over. And I just didn't use that much of it, really. And, I don't go out sick unless I'm sick, or my kid's sick when they're little. I got disciplined, and I got an unsatisfactory rating for that year or quarter or whatever it was. I think it was a year, because I used too much sick time. I had been sick too much. That was a moral failing. How dare I become sick? I have a friend right now who has glioblastoma, the cancer that killed Neil Peart. And he's actually doing great. He's a great guy. I don't want to break his anonymity of tell you who he is. But he has to continue to work. He's doing great, but he has to go into work. Even throughout all of his treatments, where he's got a freaking hose going into his head, to get the medication, because it can't pass a brain-blood barrier. And he has to go to work to maintain his insurance, because otherwise he won't have the money and they can't give him the treatment and he'll fucking die. And this is the United States. Really? I have friends in Sweden, and they could not believe that, they came over. It's you let people die because they don't have money? That's what happens? And they couldn't believe that when you were on something like state insurance, they're they pull your teeth out? They don't fill the cavity? Because for a lot of medical or dental issues you can have here in Connecticut, they'll just remove the tooth. Okay, well, all done. That's what they're going to pay for. But it wasn't just a dental. The dental stuff freaked them out, but they're you let people die. You have the facilities, you have the ability to save their lives, and you actually let them die. What's wrong with your country? What's wrong with you, man? And people want to sit around and, just well, what country do you think's better than this one? Dude, listen, I like this country. This is a place I've lived my entire life. I kind of enjoy it here. But there's some parts of it that are fucked up. And it's not you and I. It's at the top. And the stuff that we allow to happen because we've been told that's what's supposed to happen. That's okay. No, it's not, dude. No, it's not. That is not okay. Well, you're promoting socialism. I'm not promoting anything. I'm just saying that's not okay. I think one of the things, as, scaling back a little bit, as I'm sitting there pondering my mortality and what would I say different, on the channel, how would I live my life differently? I think, I'd spend a little bit more time, saying listen, don't be a dick. Some of the most important things you can do in life is to be kind to each other. You know, it's cliche to say, well, it doesn't cost you anything. Yes, it does cost you something when the person is a dick or you really don't like him. It costs me a lot to be kind to some people. I'm like, oh God, they suck. And I don't always do it. But don't be a jerk. Don't take advantage of other people. Don't screw other people over. And don't tolerate it when other people do. And the stuff that we do, the whole lie, cheat, steal, you can see assholes everywhere. They're everywhere. Trust me. But you don't put up with too much crap like in your daily life from your friends. Hopefully you don't. When people do, and if you're putting up with that kind of stuff, stop. They're not really your friends. But on a local level, you just don't put up with too much extortion and bullshit from other people. People gang up against them and say, listen, you're not doing that crap anymore. Most sociopaths and psychopaths, are in prison. They have the same personality profile as the people at the top. But most of them we identify and say, dude, you're an asshole, and we, take care of them in one way or another. But there's other people that they have more money. They have nicer cars, and they come from a better family. And all of a sudden we start tolerating shit we wouldn't tolerate from our brother or sister or neighbor. So that whole thing of like, don't be a dick to other people. Don't defraud people. Don't steal from them. That applies to everybody. And critical thinking is in very short supply. Most of what a lot of people do is regurgitate what they've heard without really thinking about it. And, it's super prevalent on the internet now because there's a soundbite for everything. And you can, your scroll gets custom tailored to you. So you start seeing the same thing over and over again. You get your own little echo chamber. And it can be very, very easy. I'm not saying people are stupid. Some are. But it can be very, very easy to start seeing all that stuff and start and believe that's right because it jives with your narrative. And actual critical thinking hurts. It does not feel good. And it especially doesn't feel, and just the energy it takes to think and going down blind alleys. I'm like, man, I don't think I understand this. I must be stupid. Not you're stupid. You're actually thinking. And yes, I watched that thing by Aperture the other day. And it was brilliant. But it's not just that. It's like when you encounter conflicting truths and conflicting evidence, and you actually have to start thinking. And when every once in a while you have something that completely challenges your beliefs, like when because I definitely, absolutely, would have argued that trickle down economics and all that stuff was a real thing. And when I had the damning amount of evidence that made me change or have to think about changing my view, challenging my view, that hurts. Because we start to identify with that kind of stuff. After a while, we don't think, we just put on an outfit. I'm this person. I believe these things. I'm part of this group, And I'm shaking my head because I've done that too, I'm not pointing at you or somebody else and saying they're stupid. There's probably some stupid person we can all point at. But it takes, oh, Jesus, that hurts. It takes effort. It's not easy. It can be emotionally painful. It can be mentally painful to think and to start, really assessing what's going on. And no, I don't mean do your own research and find out that the earth really is flat and vaccines cause autism. No, they don't. No, they don't. There's damning evidence that they don't. And all that kind of stuff. There's never mind, I'm not going to go down those rabbit holes. I don't want to get political. Because it's not really about politics at that point. It's not really about politics. It's about keeping you so distracted about other shit that they can still take your money. And you don't really realize what's really going on. A lot of, the whole thing right now with certain bills and certain changes that have, continuing to be made in the United States in terms of like taxation and in terms of regulation on business and what people can and can't do and what people in power can and can't do and people with money can or can't do. We're not thinking about that kind of stuff. You know why we're not thinking about that kind of stuff? Because we're arguing with each other about all these other social things and whether or not the earth is flat. And the people at the top, they don't care about that stuff. I don't think they believe most of the nonsense they say. They want us all fighting each other and worrying about this other shit. Or whether or not, who can use what bathroom. Well, they changed the laws to take even more of your money. And, and make and blame it on somebody else. It's the brown person. They're taking your money, Dude, they're taking your money. Elon Musk is taking your money. I'm not, I'm just using him as an example. Jeff Bezos is taking your money. Jeff Bezos is taking a lot of my money because I bought a lot of shit on Amazon. I have to say, I'm not, I am not innocent in that regard. I love this thing. Anyhow, yeah. So that's just crazy. That's just crazy. But it takes and trust me, my point isn't to get political, but it takes a lot of effort, takes a lot of mental effort to think critically about a lot of these things. But yeah, I just started thinking about, man, what would I say differently if I knew I had like 6 months to live or a year to live, and then, how would I live my life differently, and then it's okay. Well, why aren't you doing that now? And what is this really about? Is it about mortality, or is it about giving yourself the permission to do things? Is it about giving yourself the permission to say things that you actually believe, even though they might alienate some people? As a content creator, I'm not an influencer, dude. As a content creator, as a person, as a YouTube channel that is interested in having that YouTube channel become something that could provide income, and substantial income, or enough that it would be part of the way that I make my living, or all of it, who knows? There's a concern. Well, what should I say and not say? Because do I want to alienate people? Because if any of us spoke our mind, and we could alienate a lot of people. We could piss a lot of people off. There's 8 billion people on the planet. A lot of them don't think the way that you do. Surprise, or on certain subjects. So there's that moment. Do I become controversial? Not for the sake of being controversial, but do I speak my mind? Do I really want to be polarizing? Or do I want to say things that I believe a little stronger? Do I not want to hedge my bets and be as kind and say, well, this could be true or not true? Or say, dude, listen, this is the truth. If you like it, great. If you don't like it, go watch another channel. It's okay. Those are the things I started to think about. What would, and what would you do? How would you say things differently? Would you still put up with the same crap from your family? Would you still put up with the same crap from your job? Would you wait any longer to do some of the things you wanted to do in your life, or to tell certain people how you felt about them and all that stuff? That's cliche, but would you speak your mind and say, you know what, this over here is bullshit, and I don't care whether you disagree with me or not, and I'm going to say it out loud in front of a lot of people. And I remember, and in the beginning of this channel, I was much more like this back when I was in a different era, and I was still using and all that kind of stuff. But I was very opinionated. I'm an opinionated person, but I spoke my opinion a lot more. And it was about a very niche thing. It was about role playing games and what have you, which I still enjoy, which are still great hobby. That's a great hobby. People who do that are not nerds. They are intelligent, just like me. But one of the things that happened is when I got involved in recovery, when I got clean, 13 years ago, and, I started becoming involved in recovery, I started realizing that I didn't need to speak so loudly about what I believed and what other people believed that was manifestly wrong and that I believe was stupid or even harmful. And specifically within the context of recovery was about religion. I'm still an atheist. Yes, you can do 12-step recovery as an atheist, and we can talk about that if you want to. But what happened was I realized that even though I was, surrounded by people that had different beliefs than I did, and even though I fundamentally disagreed with those beliefs to a very large extent, to the point where sometimes I felt they were harmful culturally, I realized in that context I did not need to voice that. In fact, now I very rarely, in a meeting, will talk about being an atheist, unless it's to encourage other people that are agnostic or atheist or just don't know what the hell they believe, that it's okay, that they're in the right place. They don't need to believe what other people believe. Other than that, I kind of leave it alone now. And I started to treat that particular part of my life as kind of sacrosanct, which is a weird thing for an atheist to say. But we just don't talk about that stuff here. I'm not going to bash somebody else's religion or belief system, even though when some people share it, and you're really not supposed to share it there, like the particulars. And sometimes oh my God, dude, I know that God loves me and a special plan for me because I survived all these things and I never got arrested or the police didn't get me that one time, and so I survived. So I know that God has a plan for me. It's like, well, you must have hated all those other people that died of overdoses, dude. But I don't say that in a meeting. And in fact, that started to trickle out into the rest of my life, and I realized I didn't have to be a dick so much because I could be a real dick. I didn't have to voice my opinions so much, and being right wasn't so important all the time. And who was I to mess within the context of recovery with what's working for somebody? If people want to talk to me outside of that, if they want to have a discussion, they'll say, okay, well, just be warned, this could be difficult. So, and there's only a few people that ever really wanted to push on that, which is fine. But I started to become a lot nicer on the outside and not mess with people, because a lot of times it's like it's not that important to mess with people over stuff like that. However, being in this situation with facing my mortality, and I'm not going to die in case you came in here late, but I thought I might have congestive heart failure. They thought I might have congestive heart failure. I'm like looking at the statistics. Oh my God, six months? What? I was thinking, what would I say on my channel differently? What would I say to other people in life? But I'd continue the channel until I died, I think, because I really like doing this. Would I say things a little bit differently? And I don't necessarily mean politically, because I'm a very, I think it gets too nonsensical. And very often it's not about parties or systems or parties or individuals. It's about, political science is difficult, kids. There is no, first thing you got to know about political science is there's no answer. None. Zero. But it's more like, would I just speak my mind? Would I say, you know what? This over here is bullshit. And a lot of it boils down to just don't be a jerk. Don't let other people be jerks. Don't put up with other people's crap. When you're in a situation where you really can't change the big overarching structure, like there's nothing I can do to change how the United States gets run in terms of the laws that funnel all the money to the top, because that's what happens. The laws enable all the money to get funneled to the top. And, that's, it just helps the corporations and all that kind of stuff. And it's how it's been designed. I'm not going to change that. I can advocate for stuff. We can, and it would take a lot. However, in that case, I can speak out against it, though. I can tell people, like, wake up. This is what's actually happening. Stop blaming each other for where you are. Stop blaming yourself for where you are sometimes. Yes, to a certain extent, you are where you are because of what you've done. However, people have different starting points. People have different scenarios. Some people have a lot more privilege than other people do. I realize I'm a cisgender white dude living in America that was a Gen Xer that was born in 1968. And so I'm part of the generation where I'm getting fucked now, but I got to experience a lot of that prosperity that the boomers were experiencing in the beginning. I realize this. I'm not... Man, I would not want to be my kids right now, or young people. I had this 23-year-old dude. I say it's a dude. I'm not sure. Email me, because my email's on the channel. You can email me if you want to. And he's 23 years old, talking about like how tough some certain things are, and how he felt like he was behind. And one of his friends was success. I was like, man, I would not want to be 23 right now. Oh my God. Passing, I live on this thing right off this thing called the Berlin Turnpike. And if you're from Connecticut, you know what that is. A lot of motels, and they've cleaned things up to a certain extent. But, yeah, a lot of people live in the motels. A lot of business goes on in these motels. And, God, that hurts. And passing one said, room starting at $50 a night. There with Susan. Or, no, actually, no, it wasn't. It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter, Ivan. Don't get sidetracked. And I was with Susan. Son of a bitch, we were driving home from the hospital at 3 a.m., after I'd been in the hospital all night. And I said, $50. I said, well, wow, that's like $1,500 a month. And I'm seeing apartments right now in my neighborhood, $1,500 a month or more for a single bedroom apartment. And the utilities aren't included. I'm like, oh, shit. I think the person should live in the motel and have their sheets changed all the time. And, housekeeping, come on, imagine that. Somebody's going to change your sheets. Okay, it's a little room and stuff like that. But, hey, cheaper to live in a fucking motel. Pay by the day. It's insane, dude. I wouldn't want to be one of them right now. Just wouldn't want to be one of them. But that's how the system is designed. To say, you know what, dude, this is fucked up. That's not right. And then, second, too, is okay, what are you going to do about it now? It's not all your fault, like where you are in life. Partly yes, but partly no, you know? And what are you going to do about it now? And don't beat yourself up about it because, if you're like me, you can beat yourself to death about, what you've done in your life, how you're doing it. Like, oh, I'm not as good as these other people or all my other friends, this kind of stuff, or I suck. And, people told me that I was no good. And, all the trauma we have in our childhood that like makes us repeat all those voices back in our head. I'm not talking about beating yourself up, but waking up, seeing how things are and saying, okay, what can I do differently so that I am not at the mercy of these motherfuckers, you know? And which is why I'm exploring, all the business, type options I can, including really putting a lot of effort here because I really like this platform. Because I don't want to be stuck, wondering. And of course, if you're jumping in now, you missed the whole thing. Wondering, what do I do? Do I go to work sick and risk my health, or do I stay home and get better? Because I've put myself in the care of these motherfuckers. I'm gonna be horrified how much I swore in this video afterwards. In the hands of a job and everything else, and just like most people living paycheck to paycheck, where they're telling you, okay, yeah, we're not gonna pay you to be sick, dude. So good luck, and you got to cut back here sooner, you'll be fired. Instead of, the point is, what can I do? What can you do to get yourself in a position where that's not your life, where they don't have that much control over you? And is it going to be an easy road? No, not at all. If it was easy, everybody would do it, right? And now, okay, Ivan, what's the answer? What do you do? Are you going to sell me your program? No, because I don't have a freaking answer. You have to figure it out yourself. I think that's one of the reasons that my channel will never be that as popular as some channels could be and have millions of subscribers, because people don't want to hear that. When you wake up and you tell yourself, yeah, something's not right. And it doesn't matter if it's your job, if it's your relationship, whatever it is, where you are in life, the people that you're dealing with. I had a lot more examples and they're all gone now because I'm sick. But addiction, when you get to that point, you have that moment of awareness and you wake up and say, this is really, really messed up, dude. Well, most people just go back to sleep. They don't want to deal with it. For years, in active addiction, I knew that my life was completely fucked up. I knew that it was terrible. Every day, it just sucked. I knew things were bad for a long, long time, and I used for a long, long time despite it. But part of it was, Jesus, part of it was, I just wanted to go back. I just didn't want to deal with that. Just wanted to go back to sleep, not consider that. Let me just numb out. And people do that with Netflix. People do that with whatever. Going on Temu or Amazon and getting the cheap dopamine hits and buying all the stuff. I just made that video that probably nobody watched. Don't buy all this crap. Buy really expensive things that last. Whatever. You get the cheap dopamine hits. And there's other people, okay, they want to do something about it. And trust me, like I found myself in this position not so long ago. Okay, great. What do I do? How do I have how do you get a really successful YouTube channel? What do you do? I figured at least I would look. And there's all kinds of people who want to tell you what to do. Or, you get the Tony Robbins that will have you come and go to the seminars for thousands of dollars on this. This is one of the oldest tricks in the book. There's lots of people that will tell you, and generally what they're going to do is take your money to tell you the 10-step program for how to get whatever it is you want, better relationship, etc. And people, that's a very comfortable thing because we like predictability. Our brains have evolved to detect patterns and to love patterns. And if I do this, and this, then this thing happens every single time. I love that, dude. I am like, not exactly neurotypical, and I love that shit. I don't like when things are unpredictable at all. I like to do this thing happens. This little thing pops out. Okay, great. That's not how most of real life actually works. But because we like that, so many people that wake up that don't go back to sleep look for that answer. Like, just give me the fucking answer and I'll do it. That's kind of like where I was in addiction when I got into recovery. There were parts of it that were absolutely, here's the thing, dude, do not use today. Okay? Okay. And that worked instantly. I wasn't high, which I'm okay, dude. Now I'm miserable. Now what? But there was this whole recovery thing they talked about, where it was a lot of just lather, rinse, repeat. Go, keep going to meetings. I'm not going to list a whole bunch of things. It all sounded patently stupid and ridiculous, but I did it because I didn't have anything else to do. But they did give me this kind of like, okay, do this, this, and this. The difference there is there was no like little thing that popped out every time I did that. Nothing happened that I could see. That's an important part. Nothing happened that I could see. And it was only when, the years kind of went by and I looked back every once in a while like, holy shit. Like I deal with life a lot better now. This whole serenity thing they were talking about, well, okay, I'm not exactly serene, but I handle life a lot better. And, there was still a set of instructions, kind of, sort of, and it was more generic. There's a lot of other parts of life that are like that. And so, the channel probably won't be as popular as it could be because I'm not going to, tell people here's a 10-step plan because, well, there's a lot of, it's not like that, dude. If you want to get out of whatever situation, if you want to get out of addiction, I will talk to you. You can email me. We'll get on a Zoom call and we'll talk, But there's other parts of life, like if I don't want to be, or you don't want to be, at the mercy of these, well, I keep saying it, these motherfuckers that like will tell you when to come to work and how much they're going to pay you and whether you can take sick time off or not, or whether you just have to come in sick or all that other bullshit. Well, you have to do something to change your situation. What do you have to do? There are like kind of generic things, like you're going to have to sell something. You're going to have a business of some kind, But after that, I don't know. And anybody that's going to tell you that there's this, dude, they don't know either. They can tell you what their experience. And, people are different. People are different. What works for one person doesn't work for another person in regards of that, in terms of like business or whatever. It doesn't have to be anything. It's like, what kind of income do I really want? What kind of income do you really want? How much do you really need? Man, if I could just match my income now, need a little bit more, not, because my income now sucks, but if you could just match your income now but it does not come from an employer, that's a freaking win, dude. Because then, they're not telling, you're calling the shots. But okay, Ivan, how do you get there? Well, dude, I can't give you a step-by-step program. And it's just like anything else. Like I can't tell you what's going to happen because there's no guarantee. There's no guarantees in life at all. I think people got really upset when I made a couple videos about luck, and some people did, some people didn't, but some people get really upset about that. And generally, it's the people that have been lucky. And no, there's no such thing as luck. Okay, yeah, sure. Listen, I was born in the United States. I was born Caucasian. I was born male. It's a lot of fucking luck, okay? And some people were born just different families that were more affluent. That's a lot of freaking luck. And there's statistical data about persistence and how people, how much people, on average, change from the way their parents are. A lot of luck, dude. People have different starting points and different opportunities and whatever, and just the perfect storm that happens at the perfect time. People don't want to admit that. And and we can be normal people. We can be Ivan, and kind of laugh about that and say, well, listen, you got really lucky, you bastard, and so just accept that. You got lucky. Okay, and feel really high and mighty saying that. It's a bitter pill now when you're like, okay, well, I want to do something about my life in terms of like not being under the control of the motherfuckers. That's going to be my legacy. The illness is going to take a turn for the worse. I'll die, and Ivan will forever be known as the guy I just was talking about the motherfuckers. The point is, okay, you decide, all right, I want to do something about this. I'm Ivan. I want to have a successful YouTube channel, to the point where it just gives me enough of an income that I can quit my job, not be a multi-zillionaire, or whatever kind of business you decide to create, or I create. There's not a guarantee. Luck is still going to be involved. All the other stuff, all the hard work, all the that stacks the deck in your favor. but it does not guarantee it. As a gamer, I can tell you, there's the old D6, six-sided die that everybody knows about, and you start out with a 1 in 6 chance, which sucks. You can do other things or have other skills that give you a 2 in 6 or 3 in 6 or 4 in 6 or 5 in 6 chance. So only if you roll a 6 on this die now are you going to fail. You know what happens? 8.33% of the time you still, or no, 16 point. I'm thinking of a 12. 16.67% of the time you're going to roll that 6. There's a certain amount of luck, even though you're the best of the best and have done all the things right. That's a hard thing to sit with when you're not actually at where you want to get to, because there's a painful part of your life. There's many painful parts, but there's a painful part between awareness that something needs to change and getting to the goal. It can be really painful, especially because it's not guaranteed that you're going to get there. And a lot of times you're not really sure what the hell you're doing. What am I doing? Getting to this point of being able to navigate most of life okay, it took a long time. And I'll tell you what, the first few years of recovery, not fun. Not fun. This past year of just kind of, working on YouTube and getting very little results, not fun. It's apparently very normal. And there are people that I watched or saw that built YouTube channels doing things that I do not agree with and doing things that I just, I would not want to be them, and are very successful doing it. And, what do I do? Do I feel like crap about myself? Or do I say, I'm not willing to sell out? Or that's the wrong word. I'm not willing to compromise certain beliefs or morals. Once you see something, you can't unsee it. And once you look at something and say, you know what, maybe they can justify that. I can't, that sort of thing. But wherever you are, where you're trying to get from A to B, that part is not fun. Especially, it's not just because it's hard. It's not just because it's maybe you haven't done it before, so it's a little risky, or not 100% sure what's going to happen. But it's also, there's a teeny part of it. It's just not guaranteed. It's just not guaranteed. It's close. Like, trust me, believe me, do the things that you need to do to get the thing, whatever the thing is that you want, because it makes it much, much more likely. Not guaranteed. Just knowing that. But, to me, still, making the effort, railing against the dying of the light, whatever the quote is, at least you're being yourself. At least you're being, living according to your beliefs and chasing what you're, really after, and all that kind of stuff, and all this other motivational cliche type stuff. I'd much rather do that. And for a long part of my life, I didn't do that. I just felt it was hopeless. I just hoped somebody would come rescue me. I wanted to hide. And I still play the Powerball. And if they rescue me, great. Will I still make videos? Yeah. But then I'll talk about whatever the hell I want to talk about. It's probably not going to happen. There's a greater chance of me being eaten by a shark right now in this basement than me winning the Powerball. Or they're pretty close, about neck and neck in terms of probability. And if you watch this channel, I love probability and dice and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, that part can be really uncomfortable. And talking about that and, admitting that is, it's not really sexy. It doesn't sell a lot. It's one of the reasons that this channel probably will never be that like super duper popular. That's okay. I think the people that resonate with what I have to say, I think they're a cut above. Why would you want to appeal? Which I guess circles all the way back to what I started talking about in the beginning. How would you change your life? What would you say differently if you knew you had 6 months to live or a year to live? And realizing you don't have to make everybody happy. You just don't. You're never going to. It's impossible. And trust me, I am one of those people that when I've got a whole bunch of people that like me and there's one sourpuss in the corner. Did I say sourpuss? That's what old people say. Jeez. There's one person in the corner that doesn't like me or said something, harsh to me. I will perseverate over that one person, which is crazy. It's part of my makeup, and it's part of my trauma and all that kind of stuff. I understand why I do that, and I try not to focus on that. But you're not going to please everybody. You're not. And realizing that and being okay with that and treating your life or what you say as if you only got so much time left. Say things a little bit differently. Piss some people off. It's funny. On a live stream, you can see it. Sometimes you can see people like drop off when you say something that might be controversial. And I can definitely get the comments from people that are not happy with what